The overall unit inquiry is what makes a healthy Year 3 lunchbox. The lesson inquiry will be what type of fruit did 3G bring to Crunch and Munch time. The context is students have been learning about importance of healthy eating patterns in health and physical education. The school is a state school and requires the students to bring in one piece of fruit in every day for Crunch and Munch time. The lesson chosen to present from the 4D model is the discovery phase, where students are constructing and interpreting simple column graphs, picture graphs, lists and tables, and comparing data displays. The students already have the prior understanding of how to collect data using tallies, interpret lists and tables, and display them into simple column graphs and picture graphs. Students will compare a picture graph and a simple column graph and describe the similes and differences between them. This will be the new knowledge that they will be gaining. The ACARA links for this lesson are interpreting and comparing data displays by comparing various students-generated data representations and describing their similes and differences. The cross-curricular link will be through health and physical education, where students will be identifying practice strategies to promote health and safety and well-being by examining their own eating patterns and examining the types of fruit that they eat. The mathematical understanding will be when students interpret the data from a table and put it into picture graphs or a simple column graph. The features that go into each graph. They will also grasp the similes and differences between the two graphs. For problem solving, they will discover how to display the data into a picture graph, as well as problem solving and working out that any type of fruit can make a healthy lunchbox. Now for actually introducing the lesson. In this lesson, students will be introduced to the question, what type of fruit does 3G bring to Crunch and Munch? The data was collected from the students at Crunch and Munch time from the day before. This was done so the students would be engaged in the data, knowing it was based off their classmates' results and themselves. The data is presented in the table. As students have prior knowledge of how to read data in a table, the teacher will facilitate their prior knowledge and understanding of what is by asking key question about what the table is telling us. The teacher will have to ask questions like, is this table useful for displaying the data? Which fruit did most people bring to Crunch and Munch time? By this key understanding, students are showing their prior knowledge of how to interpret the results from the table. Also, this is why there'll be 2 examples of each graphs to help facilitate their understanding by showing old examples that they can refer back to and ways of representing the data for each graph. The teacher will then question the class to remind them of which features that go on each graph, like the titles, the numbers. Now for the main activity. The teacher will get students into groups of 2. They'll be in pairs, so student 1 will be creating a bar graph while student 2 creates a picture graph. This will be done in order to show their prior knowledge of how to construct a picture graph or a simple column graph. There will also be the previous slide on the board to help facilitate the students to remind them of the features that go into both graphs. The teacher will be asking questions to get the students thinking about what they have already learnt, like where would you put the titles for the graph? Where would we put the numbers for both fruits? Do we use a ruler when we're drawing our graphs? For our picture graphs, do we need a key? The teacher will also get the students to look at partners' work and see if they've forgotten any features in the graphs. The video shown will be the end result the teacher will be looking for, a simple column graph. This next part is where the new learning is occurring. In pairs, students will have to think, pair and share what they think the differences are and the similes are between the 2 graphs. The teacher will ask key questions to drive the learning. These questions will include, do both graphs use a key? Do both graphs go up in ones? Do both graphs display the data to answer our inquiry question? Do they both have the same titles used? Do both the graphs display the same data as seen in the tables? This will be done in order to facilitate the critical thinking and guiding the answers that is expected in the Venn diagram. At the end of the think, pair and share, the teacher will bring the class together and will get students to share their answers. She will write the main answers on the board that she thinks are good. The class will then copy these answers on their own Venn diagram. The answers that are expected are the differences in the picture graph having a key, having pictures to represent the data, with the bar graph, the numbers along the side, and they use bars to reach the numbers to show the amount. Now in the middle column, which is the same, the expected answers are titles and the same data, same answers. Differentiation is used throughout with think, pair, share. As students are in pairs, when one is struggling or having difficulty to grasp the idea, the other partner can help out and assist. Differentiation will also be used when students have to discuss and not write down the answers when comparing and contrasting the graphs. By also using a range of teaching techniques to teach the lesson through photos of graphs, which is visual cues, Discussing and collaborating in pairs and whole class discussions is auditory and kinesthetic learners. And by creating the graphs themselves and writing down the similes and differences, it is targeting those students who prefer to read and write. Therefore, this activity is targeting all the preferred learner types in order for all students to respond to the lesson. By reviewing the process that we undertook in comparing the various student-generated data representations and describing the similes and differences, by the end of the lesson, students will be able to answer these key questions. What was the same about the column graph and the picture graph? What was the differences about the two graphs? Can we identify the types of fruit 3G brought to crunch and munch time? That's the lesson inquiry. The overall inquiry is having a piece of fruit in your lunchbox every day contributing to having a healthy lunchbox? The extension activity will be to create a pie graph using the same data, and you have to write the similes and differences between all three displays. This is the expected outcomes of the lesson that the students should have generated.